Welcome back to another episode of the Higher Love with Megan podcast, talking all things mind, body, soul, healing and expansion with me, your host, Megan Cooper. This podcast seeks out wisdom for how to live better, to support our bodies, liberate our minds, open our hearts and nourish our souls so that we can expand into our fullest expression and live with love, vitality and freedom. Up on the podcast this week, we have a very special guest, my wonderful partner, Caspar Chittenden. Caspar is a transformational life coach supporting courageous men to radically realign their lives and build authentic success, connection and fulfillment. Caspar spent 10 years working as a strength and conditioning coach, co-owning and managing his London-based training centre, 3 Aces Training. During this time, Caspar noticed a correlation between the results his clients were getting and their lifestyles outside of the gym, identifying the impacts of stress and mental and emotional well-being on our health in general. Caspar sold out of the business at the start of 2021 to focus on meeting men on a deeper level and now runs his private life coaching practice from our home together in Brighton. This episode was recorded with the intention to be a call to action for men, an invitation to explore your inner landscape, to ask yourself powerful questions, and if necessary, be a catalyst for transformation and meaningful change. This episode encourages an honest look at your current operating system and how to go about upgrading your way of being so that you can live a life of increased ease, connection, fulfillment, love, joy, and purpose. Well, it's very nice having this conversation with you on a very sunny Friday afternoon, so welcome.
Thanks for having me. We've been talking about having this conversation for some time after many mornings sat on the sofa putting the world to rights and talking about, making a podcast. So we're finally here, making it happen. Very exciting.
Awesome. Well, why don't you start off by giving a bit of an introduction to yourself and to your background? Over the last 18 months, you've shifted gears from purely physical training into the world of men's life coaching. So what an incredible journey it's been. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about that for people listening.
Yeah, so my background is in physical health and well-being. I started out as a trainer and a coach, later forming and founding my own gym with my 2 business partners, Richard and Mark Brockhurst, a gym called 3 Aces Training. And 10 years in that business, really kind of understanding or getting to understand and learn so much about the physical body, how to develop athletic performance over time. We had a very holistic approach to health and wellness. I got to a stage in my career in the kind of health and wellness arena where I was starting to notice that I didn't have the tools that I needed to be able to help people on a deeper level. So that's why I changed over into transformational life coaching, because the tools in which I now have can help me go a lot deeper with my clients and really transform people from a much deeper place.
So what were you noticing when you talk about the limitations that you were seeing people getting to in their training, where perhaps there was something bigger going on beneath the surface that was blocking them in some kind of way? What did that look like? Because what you're saying is that our mental and emotional landscape is actually really paramount to our physical well-being as well. So how did you begin to notice that?
Yeah, that's a really great question. For example, we'd have individuals turning up to the gym and everybody's on the same training program, but some people are able to really excel on that training program and some people would kind of remain stuck and unable to really progress and achieve a high level of physical performance and health and wellness. And after kind of asking questions, because we knew our clients really well and had strong relationships with those individuals and just kind of asking questions about what their life's looking like outside of the gym and starting to notice that the people who are really struggling with, for example, like weight loss or muscle gain or just kind of motivation to get into the gym, were really kind of struggling with other stuff kind of outside of the four walls of the gym. And yeah, that's where I started to kind of get inquisitive and really wanting to understand a little bit more about like how I can help these types of people. Because if we're walking around with a lot going on in our personal lives, for instance, that's going to perhaps lead us to eating more chocolate or not getting enough sleep or drinking a lot of alcohol or so it's like these things that you can't really out-train that. You can go into the gym and you can try to stick to a good diet, but if you've got things kind of going on in your life that are really challenging, it's going to kind of prohibit you from really getting into great shape and moving forward with your health in general.
So what you're saying is that our mental and emotional landscape is where we have the capacity to make huge changes in our lives. So this is obviously a really exciting venture for you over the last 18 months of deciding to quit the gym and to sell your share within the business. It's been an incredible journey for you. But how did that look and feel at the time? Because obviously stepping away from a business that you have built over the course of, 7 years, that's a big decision, and I've been there myself in terms of leaving a corporate job to step into the arena of wellness, and there's always a lot of doubt there and a bit of, the road ahead isn't totally certain. So how did that look and feel, and how did you make that decision to leave? How can we go about making radical decisions to make ourselves happy?
Yeah, that's a great question. For me, it was this kind of intuitive feeling, when you're working on your business, and everybody out there who's listening to this will understand, you give so much to it. It's your baby, you built it yourself. Like, you never really get time off. Even if you're taking the weekend off, it's always kind of operating in the back of your mind. So you're very much like in the coal face at all times. And what I was noticing was when I'd like given myself some space and kind of stepped away a little bit to like take some time off, I was starting to get these kind of intuitive feelings of, okay, I'm starting to feel like I'm like kind of outgrowing this. I'm looking to do something else. I kind of want to do something else, and something was kind of coming through me. And this happened a year and a half, 2 years before I made the decision to leave. But when I kind of coming back from that trip that I took, where I had that feeling of like, okay, well, I think things need to change here. I'm straight back into work, straight back into business, straight back into working with my team, straight back into working with clients, straight back into sales and management and all that stuff. And you're just back into kind of operation mode, and that those thoughts that you had are now just like put on the back burner because you've got a business to run, and you've got people to take care of. And when the pandemic happened and we were forced to close the gym, it really gave all of us like a time to really like slow down and take stock of what was going on. And for me, it was very much like a chance to kind of reflect and like look at where I was from like a zoomed out position. And it was during this time where I kind of decided, I looked at everything that I had going on in my life, and I was like, if I want to make this change, now is the time to do it. I also, I wanted to leave London. I sort of got to the end of my road there. Well, I did enjoy living in London at the time, but I just wanted something else. I wanted to be closer to nature. I didn't want to be in a city which is kind of so fast paced and very kind of orientated around consumption and consumerism to a point. And so there were many things that I wanted to change, and so I decided that I was going to sell out of the business and take some time out for retraining as a transformational life coach.
So I think let's just bring into the equation another aspect that I'd love to bring into this conversation, and we'll circle back around to how we go about making big changes in our lives and everything that comes with that. But just to bring into the equation now, what you see affecting men most in today's society and over the last decades. You've mentioned things that you're witnessing in clients that you're working with at the gym, clients that you are now working with within your coaching practice, and just, growing up as a boy, as a man in today's society, and what you notice within your generation, within your peer group. You talked about things going on beneath the surface. What do you see as these things going on?
So I would say there are multiple things kind of going on, and obviously this varies from individual to individual. It can be a bit of a mixture of purpose, finding purpose, individual purpose within your life, inner leadership around like making decisions based off your own unique values, boundary creation. Okay, and kind of alongside boundary creation and holding, firm boundaries around like your limits are people pleasing. And as well, it's, there's a lot of resistance about vulnerable communication. That's just something that I feel just really needs to change. It's so important to be able to really get honest with your feelings and emotions and speak your truth. And when you're feeling hurt, or when you're feeling pain, or when you're experiencing grief, or whatever that emotion may be, if it's not spoken out and it's not processed properly, it's where we're going to get a lot of resistance showing up.
So it's this kind of like emotional literacy, as in when we're not used to talking about these things, sometimes actually it can be really hard to label what the emotion is. Sometimes we get so out of touch with how we're actually feeling, and then also just getting into the process of like pushing things down, not communicating them, and then just getting into this area of numbing things out, and then having that disconnection of mind and body, but then also that just creates a feeling of dis-ease in the background anyway. And often we can think of these as unique experiences, something that's just happening for us. And of course, everyone is having their own unique experience, and things are happening for people on an individual level. Our lives are all obviously individual, so things that have happened in the past, things that are happening in our present, are all unique to us. However, when we zero out from that, these are things affecting people collectively. And what that points to is things going on within our society and within the culture that we have created that really perpetuate these issues. All we have to look for essentially for proof of that is collective mental health, men's suicide rates, and just all of these kind of, it's not really rocket science, is it? It's like you just look outside and you see that even though we are what we think is a very technologically advanced society, our general health is kind of worse than ever. So what collective issues do you think that this points to for men overall?
Yeah, I think the big collective issue here is this kind of paradigm that we live within. It's a paradigm of success and what success looks like, what we're kind of told is value within men in general. And if you kind of fall short of that, there's something kind of wrong with you, in some sense. It's about like men being, seen as strong, and showing any signs of weakness is bad. This whole kind of like boys don't cry thing, I think is very unhelpful. It's like from an early age, it's like, you shouldn't cry. It's weak showing emotion. If that's drilled into you from like an early age, it's just a very unhelpful programming to live by. It means that you're unable to express your emotion, and when you're unable to express your emotion, you're unable to tell your friends, your parents, your partner like really how you feel. And then when you just say, oh, okay, yeah, everything's fine, I'm fine, you're just you're programming yourself. Oh, actually having these experiences is normal, I'm fine, pushing it down, and then we wonder why we get into this state of like discomfort, and then we look for things to soothe our hurts, numb that pain. Coping mechanisms that come in all manner of variety, from alcohol and drug consumption to overworking, over exercising, binge eating, online shopping, gambling, the list goes on. So yeah, that's really kind of what we got going on at the moment. And it'd be great to start to see that shifting.
There is a big shift going on within mental health in general, and especially in regards to men. I feel like there's a lot of work out there being done at the moment, against this Boys Don't Cry. See all these kind of projects like Mankind Project, different retreats running for men, men's groups. There's a lot more of it starting to happen, but there's obviously a lot more work to be done. Just going back into what you were saying about success and the way that we view success, what would you say as a man has been put upon you to believe what success is?
Talking about my own kind of personal experience, I grew up to feel that like success was very much, you get a job, a good quality corporate job, you provide security for your family. That is kind of your purpose, to be successful and to provide security in a sense. And then whatever else comes with that way of living. So that was very much like how I personally viewed success growing up from a boy into a young adult into a young man. It was tricky for me because I personally grew up with dyslexia, and my path was very different. I went to university, dropped out, and moved to South America to start my own thing, and thankfully made a big success of that. But my path wasn't linear.
So how do you feel like that creates a gap for men who are entering into this paradigm of what success looks like? How do you feel like that sets some men up for a sense of failure? Because what we're kind of creating is this existential angst of, this is where I ought to be, this is what's expected of me, and if I fall short of that, then I'm not worthy. And we connect our sense of self-worth to what society's been put upon us as what is deemed worthy and deserving of validation and love, essentially. And respect. That's a big thing. So how do you feel that really creates this kind of like a pressure cooker for a lot of men?
I think that something which comes up for me listening to you speak, there's something here about growing up and living by the values of others or the values set out by society as a whole, and kind of denying your own authenticity, and finding yourself in a job because your tutor at university was like, this is the direction that you need to go in. The men and women who have guided you in your early adulthood to a place where it's like, this is what you need to do to be successful. But inside you're like, I don't want to do that. This is not, this doesn't really resonate with me. This is not my purpose. And that's where you start to get this sense of I see it a lot, I see it a lot with guys that I know, peers of mine, with clients, with ex-clients, and just listening to men in men's groups as well. And I think that it's a really key piece. I think that growing up and going into professional life and not understanding, not following your true purpose or your calling, or going after those things that you really want to do, that can cause a lot of discomfort and a lot of a big kind of lack of fulfillment, I guess. Yeah.
Purpose is a really big thing, isn't it? And it's not just connected to the job that we're doing, but it's how we feel in regards to, why we're here and how we're showing up in the world. And I feel like it's very easy to feel unfulfilled unless you're really following things that are really important to you. And that doesn't have to be that you are, following your heart in terms of your career. I mean, that's an important thing. But, the way that you talk, or the way that we speak about values, is making sure that you're doing the things that really matter to you. And, if you have certain hobbies or things that you really love doing, not doing those things really erodes your sense of being here. And the difficulty is that sometimes when we have followed the path that's been expected of us, or the path of our peers, sometimes we actually don't really know what those things are. And sometimes we have to do quite a lot of deep excavation to actually know what is us and what is other people, what's been put upon us, what have people or the media or society told us that we like, but actually maybe we don't. So I feel like, I know that you've worked through values with some of your clients to really try and ascertain what it is that makes them happy on a deeper level. That is a bit of a process, isn't it? Getting to know ourselves is a process. It's a bit of a cliche that people kind of always bring into the equation of leaving school and you go off to find yourself type thing. But in my mid-20s, I really got to a point where I felt like I actually didn't really know myself very well. And by that, it was I didn't really know what was going to make me happy or what I really wanted to be doing. But I just knew that my current remit, my current kind of lens of awareness and the current situation that was available for me at the time wasn't making me happy. So it's enabling ourselves to, take these leaps to get to know ourselves. And I know that you said that slowing down was a really important step for you. Yeah, then just being bold enough to make these steps. So what would you say are the signs for people ready to make a change, or signals from your body that maybe you're off course, maybe there's this sense of dis-ease, because we talked about stress, and stress is obviously completely endemic within our society, but stress is basically you're out of alignment in some kind of way. I mean, yeah, maybe you got too much on your plate, or maybe you're overwhelmed, maybe you're burnt out, but for a lot of people who do just feel kind of this sense of stress, it is a bit of a symptom that something's a bit out of whack. So can you talk a little bit about the signs from your body, mind, nervous system of when something's wrong, maybe when you're ready for a change?
Yeah, I love that. I guess I can talk from, my own personal experience with burnout. And that was probably back in 2017, 2018. We had opened up a second location and had an on-ramping process for clients that was very time heavy. And, I kind of at the time, I was very much around just grit my teeth and work really hard. I'll outwork anybody, I'll out-train anybody. I just felt like resilient and strong as fuck. But like, in actual fact, I could kind of put up with that level of kind of demand that I put myself under for a certain time. But after a while, it really started to kind of break me down. I was coming home and my mind was still like racing at like 100 miles an hour. My body was exhausted. I couldn't sleep properly. Had massive lack of libido. I was really struggling with speaking. Was really difficult, and I was really getting these kind of like out of body experiences. So that's quite an extreme level where your body is like giving you big warning signs that like something is not right and you're really out of alignment, and you need to concentrate on establishing like a good baseline again. So yeah, that's kind of one extreme end of the scale. But I think when we're out of alignment with our values and our the things that give us joy and purpose, we can really feel like a level of resentment there. And the difficulty with stress is that the human body is incredibly adaptive, and like training, we adapt to stimulus, you adapt to a level of stress. So it becomes very hard to see beyond that because you've adapted to the stress itself. You just kind of crack on, and things are a bit tough, and that's fine. So stress can kind of arise in many ways. We can become very distracted, we can become irritable. Stress can affect our sleep, stress can affect our libido, and stress can really it can affect our mood. And really, when we're in that high level of stress, we're always looking for something to take us away from that dis-ease in ourselves. So this is again where people will look for some kind of relief in something that will move them from their kind of, if your natural state is a state of discomfort, it's like, obviously you're going to be moving towards something that's going to like give you some relief from that state.
And I love what you said there, kind of leaning towards our level of awareness, in that if we are used to feeling a certain way, it becomes our baseline and it becomes our norm. And in the same way as we're only aware of what we know, right? So we don't necessarily think that there is anything available for us outside of that necessarily. It takes quite a kind of expanded level of awareness, and also the time and space to be able to reflect upon, maybe how we're feeling, in order to visualize a kind of way out for ourselves, or an idea of doing something differently. Can you talk a little bit about that lens of awareness? Because I know that you talk about this a lot when we're together, that lens of awareness for men of what is available.
Yeah, it's a super interesting topic. Yeah, like I said, when we're kind of in it and in the thick of it, it's very hard to kind of see kind of light through the trees, I guess. So as I mentioned beforehand, giving yourself some space to really tune into your body is one of the first steps, I would say, in gaining some awareness around like your true state. So one practice that I have and have been utilizing for a long time is I wake up in the morning. I don't wake up with my mobile phone waking me up. I usually wake up with an alarm or with the just sun rising naturally. And what that enables me to do is carve out some time where I'm just connected to myself. Okay, I'm not distracted with anything else. I can just get out of bed, make a cup of lemon water, sit down, meditate, or if I'm just sit down on the sofa and just really listen to my internal landscape. Am I feeling any tension? Where's my mind at? And that's been such a huge game changer for me. It's been massive. It sounds like such a small thing, but it really, really has just shifted how I was able to tune into my inner state. In the past, my mobile phone would wake me up. It would go off. I've got my phone in my hand. Literally, the first thing I do is check my emails, and I've got emails coming in from old clients, or there's something going on, in my business, and automatically, my day has started with stress. I'm back in, I'm in work mode immediately. I haven't had any chance to really check in with myself. But just to caveat that, I understand that for many guys listening to this, if you've got kids, you've got a business to run, you may not have 15 minutes every morning in your day-to-day to do this practice. So what I would suggest is just finding some time during your week, even if it's 15 minutes of your lunch break or half an hour on the weekend, where you're just sat down with no distractions on your own and really just kind of checking in on yourself. That is a powerful way to really start to kind of explore your own inner landscape by creating some type of quiet and stillness within yourself, and really just kind of exploring. If you're sat down and you're feeling a sense of anxiety, it's why is that? Where's that coming from? What's the cause of that? And when we start to look at the cause, then we're whoa, maybe some changes need to be made here.
And what you're pointing to at the end there is developing the sense of body literacy. So noticing the sensations of dis-ease and then getting curious about them. But the issue I think that faces a lot of people in today's society is that we're so overwhelmed so much of the time, and that's been going on for so long, that we've had to numb out from how our body is feeling. So you hear a lot of people saying that they can't really feel very much in their body, or they don't feel like they've got a very good mind-body connection, because we've siphoned off, in a way, that connection to ourselves, because we spend so much time in the head. We're always thinking, we're always moving on to the next thing. Maybe you experience anxiety or anxious thoughts or symptoms of, and people say that they feel very disconnected. And I imagine for a lot of men, actually getting in touch with how they are feeling on a deeper level, when that hasn't been part of their remit, is quite a challenging thing, because how do you know how you feel when you've become quite disconnected from your body? Is that something that you think is a real thing for men?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially because we're, programmed around suppressing emotions, or, I've got to kind of be strong and just kind of man up. So actually when something arises, we're kind of pushing it away, which further numbs out the mind-body connection.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to generalize here, but yeah, for a lot of guys that is really tricky. And that's why mindfulness and meditation and breath work, other somatic practices, can be really, really powerful for getting in touch with your emotional self and your emotional landscape. And from there, you can really start to uncover what you need to do and what needs to be done in your life in order to bring yourself to a back towards a bit more of a center line and a sense of ease. And when you have that sense of ease, and you're moving away from a state of dis-ease and stress, we're able to experience so much more joy, so much more clarity, mental acuity. We're not operating from a reactive place, we're operating from a responsive place. Mm-hmm. We're able to look at the world with a completely different lens, and I know this because I've lived that. I know it firsthand. I'm not just kind of theorizing here. Mm-hmm. I have experienced that myself.
Because stress also cuts off our feeling creative, right? When we're using, just one part of the brain, it's like our creativity, for a lot of people, and I've experienced this myself as well, goes offline almost. So even though we know that we want to be making some changes, You know, for me, I knew that I wanted to change out of my corporate career, but I couldn't really conceive what that looked or felt like because I was so in one situation. I really intuitively felt like I needed to kind of step outside of that in order to almost get my creative juices flowing. Like, I noticed for me that I really felt uninspired, and it's really hard to conceive of like who we want to be in the world, or what we want to create, or who we want to become, or anything that demands any sense of creativity when we're just feeling like pushed down and like uninspired and a bit flat in general.
Yeah.
So, you know, what you're saying in terms of like slowing down and really getting in tune with our, you know, emotions and what our body signals are trying to tell us, you know, it's really valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's and what you're talking about there is like moving from a state of survival to a state of thriving.
Yeah. So for men that feel like they want to make some changes, like something is not quite right, just circling back to maybe the decisions that you have made within your lifetime where you've kind of burnt what you're doing to the ground type thing and moved on to the next ladder, the next challenge. Can you talk a little bit about, giving people some solidarity in that area? Because making big changes, especially when you've got a lot, you know, riding on you in terms of mortgages to pay, in terms of finances, in terms of responsibilities to other people, you know, responsibilities to partner, family, etc. How do you think you can speak to people wanting to make changes right now?
So I guess with changes, it depends on the level of change you're wishing to make in your life. You know, small changes, I would, you know, when it comes to like improving your mental, physical and energetic well-being and emotional well-being, you know, it's just about carving out that time in your day to do practices that are going to, you know, increase your vitality, increase your creativity, increase your health, increase your longevity. But when it comes to making big changes in your life, it's challenging. I'm not going to lie. You know, especially if you've got a lot of responsibility, you know, making a big change is scary. But I think what you need to ask yourself here is like, am I satisfied in staying put and operating within my comfort zone? And perhaps later down the line, looking back and regretting not acting on the opportunity to make a change, or just going for it. You know, having those conversations with your partner, with your, you know, with your boss, you know, saying to, I'm not satisfied in the role that I have here. Like, what are my steps to progression? Because that is also an option, you know.
With making changes, there's a lot to it, isn't there? And I think, you know, especially for men as well, there's a lot of expectation and there's a lot of kind of, I guess, like lad banter that goes along with things. And I know that, you know, I've had friends that have struggled to move away from things or enter into like new practices, especially in, you know, the area of self-development. You know, if you're wanting to read different books, if you're wanting to go to different classes, if you're wanting to take up different practices, if you're wanting to work with a therapist or a coach, you kind of set yourself up, right, for like a little bit of flack, or, you know, feeling like, is it okay for me to change? Who will I be the other side of change? Can you talk a little bit about how you've moved through those areas, or how you would speak to somebody else who's worried about making changes and the repercussions of that?
Yeah, I think that sometimes it's our own like assumptions of how we're going to be seen and received that can stop us from actually making progress, which is the crazy thing, you know. And I've experienced this firsthand. It's like, you know, talking about going on retreats and talking about spiritual practice, or talking to kind of friends who your usual kind of conversation could be very sort of banter, you know, orientated and actually surprising. You know, you actually get, what I found personally is getting a lot of real positive feedback and support from my peers. But I understand for a lot of people out there, like, if it's really different, you know, it may just be kind of like laughed at, and that can, you know, maybe be challenging for you. But you know, at the end of the day, it's like it comes back to that inner leadership piece. You know, you can sit within your comfort zone. You talk about growth, you know, but growth comes with exploring new territory, which does feel uncomfortable. It feels uncomfortable to start, but that is how we grow. It's by doing things that take us outside of our comfort zone, and help us like expand.
So we've talked about making changes with our outward world, but just to come a little bit back into making changes within our mental and emotional landscape, do you feel like you have made changes within your emotional landscape, and when did that happen? How did that come about, and what's the difference between how you felt before and how you feel now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a deep one, this one, and I'm happy to go there. So reflecting back, one powerful shift for me happened 5 years ago when I lost my best friend. He tragically passed away in a car accident, which was incredibly painful, and it just rocked my world. It was very incredibly upsetting and really difficult to deal with, and I got to a point where I decided that I needed to go and seek therapy to start to help me overcome this loss. And so I took myself off to therapy, and it was it kind of felt like the first time I'd ever been listened to properly, which was quite an experience. And during this time, I spent sort of 6 months going through this process, and it wasn't just speaking about my loss and overcoming my grief, but really just taking a deep dive into like all the things that had happened to me, from my childhood all the way up until present day, and helping to kind of like unpack and process all of that stuff. And what became really apparent to me was that like I've been just carrying this stuff around, like baggage, just been carrying it about like for day in, day out. And it kind of sits like, it's not front and center. It just kind of like sits in your periphery consciousness. But you operate from those places of hurt, let's say like, I don't know, something happened and it made you feel this way. So when a similar scenario arises, you automatically fall back into that feeling of hurt. So it was incredibly transformative, that process. And I mean, the how I felt kind of before then to how I feel now, I mean, it's completely different, I mean, we all grow and develop, but like 5 years, the way that I look at the world now is just completely different from the way that I was, viewing and moving through the world 5 years ago. Obviously the nature of the work that I do, I spend a lot of time reading, and learning, and just understanding kind of all things related to like the human condition, and so it's very much like it's something that I'm incredibly interested in, and obviously like when I learn, I implement those theories and practices and try to adopt them in my state of being.
I think it's a really important point, that feeling listened to. And it was also something that my friend Stephen brought up on my other episode about modern day masculinity, that when he went to go and see a therapist, it felt for him like that it was the first time that he was really listened to. And I think that that's such a healing thing, isn't it? I know that you've just recently started going to men's circles in Brighton. And from my own experience of going to women's circles, it's a space where we get to share vulnerably. When other people don't respond, where they don't chime in with advice, there's an opportunity for people to maybe give you feedback if it's asked for. But apart from that, you're just invited to speak freely. And, that's such a healing thing. And I know that can be quite a surprising thing for men who then go into therapy. Can you talk a little bit about the kind of taboo around receiving therapy and coaching as a man?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it comes from a place of like, this idea of, men are strong and we don't talk about our feelings. It kind of goes completely against that. It's an admission of there's something not right, which is against the paradigm that we've been living and existing in. to the point where therapy is incredibly powerful and it can shift so much for you, and the reluctance to do it, or for me it's just backwards. If you've got stuff going on and things aren't all when you're in a position of things aren't great in your life, go and speak about it to somebody. Like, go and have a conversation with a therapist, have a honest conversation with a friend or your partner. When we talk about things that we hold shame around, when we speak them out into our reality, we kind of release some of its energetic charge. Get it off your chest. It literally is like moving that like heavy weight off. So it's so important. And any guys who are listening to this are going through stuff, and you're not comfortable with what you've got going on in your life right now, go speak to somebody about it.
Yeah. And I think as well, just going back to men's circles or group spaces as well, with group spaces that I've held and also attended, the beautiful thing about that is that we realize that we're not the only one. And going back to the point that we made at the beginning of this podcast, it's like we think that our problems are individualized, and up until a point they are, because they're unique to our circumstances. But it's so amazing that when you enter into the space of, say, a men's circle, you vocalize something and realize that everybody else in the room can really identify with a part of what you said. Or someone says something and you're like, holy shit, I thought I was the only person that felt like that. And it can be so healing for us just to realize that we're actually just not the only one. And I think that my perception is that men struggle because they don't, it's a sweeping generalization, because they don't talk about things as much, don't get things off their chest. They feel like they are the only person that's carrying XYZ and kind of push it down, and it becomes kind of so repressed. It's just like this kind of like ball of tension and stress that then comes out either through the body or through the nervous system or, through coping mechanisms. So yeah, it's this whole kind of system that we've set up. It really perpetuates this kind of systemic repression of our own growth, I guess, as humans. Can you speak a little bit to, from your own experience, what is on the other side of doing this work, of making changes within your lifestyle to come into deeper alignment with yourself, making maybe big steps to really feel this big sense of fulfillment and really getting to know ourselves and really getting to be able to communicate vulnerably and to know our emotions and to, really start to work on that side of our internal landscape? Can you talk on what is the other side of that?
Yeah, I love this. On the other side of our resistance and stress and struggles, when we go and do the work, whatever that might look like for you, on the other, doing this work is not comfortable. I'm also just going to say that it's like you're going to face some things that you've been pushing down and like hiding from for a while, and when it comes up, it's like it's hard, it's ugly, and you got to be vulnerable. Just getting comfortable with that on its own is enough to really like help push you forward in the right direction and really move past whatever might have happened in your past or whatever resistance you've been holding on to. It helps you just kind of let go and release that energetic charge. But on the other side of that, I really find that it's just a sense of peace and ease and joy, and your day-to-day life can just be so much more. You can experience life at just such a higher level. You don't need to be seeking things to validate your way of being. You don't need that holiday. You don't need that car. You don't need that next item. You don't need to be doing a certain thing to feel happy. You just are. You wake up excited about the day. You wake up excited about what you've got going on. You wake up excited about the possibility of what you're going to create. And that's just fucking awesome. That's not to say hard things aren't going to occur in your life, but when you're operating from this place, you're just much better equipped to be able to deal with things when they arise.
Yeah, and I think listening to you saying that, it just really makes me feel like we have no idea how good we can actually feel. I think that when we've got so used to living this life that is maybe not in our full alignment, we've really forgotten how, or maybe we just never knew how good life can feel. And I feel like for me, you know, doing a lot of self-exploration, really getting to know myself, really bringing my own life into alignment. I didn't know how good relationships could be until I entered into a relationship with you, because I wasn't aware before how good it could be, if that makes sense. It's like we don't necessarily know how fulfilled we can feel within a job, or how lit up by our lives we can feel, or how deeply connected we can feel to a partner, because it goes back to that, like, we only know what we know. So it's really just expanding our capacity for, like, maybe I should just ask for more. Maybe I should be open to receiving more. Maybe I could feel 10 out of 10 in all areas of my life. Like, why the fuck not?
Yeah, exactly. It is literally why the fuck not, and it comes back to this question. It's like, are you satisfied?
Yeah.
Like, can you ask yourself that question now? Are you satisfied? Like, are you satisfied with what you've got going on in your life?
Yeah.
And if you're like, oh, this could be better, that could be better, it's like, well, go do something about it, because life is short, and I really felt this, you know, after my friend died. It's like, I really feel like I need to, like, honor this life and, like, live it to the absolute fullest, because it can just be snatched away from you that quickly. And to get up and just be like, oh, another day at the grind, it's like, really? Like, it can be so much more joyous than that. If we remove ourselves, you know, we can be our worst enemy, you know. Just get out of our own way and, like, go and seek more, demand more.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like on a collective level, there's a lot of work here to be done, isn't there? You know, there's a lot of work for men to do within themselves and collectively, and there's a lot of work for both men and women to do together. You know, for men to support men, for men to support women, for women to support men, you know, collectively, for us all to move forward as a society which is not polarized, which really has this synergistic approach where we don't have to judge other people as right or wrong, or less than or more than. You know, for us to all really rise together, there is a lot of work to be done. But what would you say is your advice to men feeling the call to rise up within themselves, to really make changes? What would you say?
Yeah, I would say that it's step by step, baby steps. You know, it doesn't need to be all done at once. I think it's just getting comfortable with the small things. You know, like I said, the biggest game changer for me, really, it was just carving out, like, that small amount of time in the morning just to really tune in with myself and, like, get to know my inner landscape and how I was feeling. You know, that can be, you know, creating some time in your day where you're just, like, on your own with no distractions. It could be just 5 minutes. And with that, like, to double down on it, it's like just writing down how you feel. And also, like, writing down what you already have in your life. You know, so much to be grateful for. Get that down and just be like, I already have these, you know, X, Y, and Z things that give me joy. So you can always start to get yourself into that place of, like, oh, it doesn't have to be kind of doom and gloom, or, like, you know, you've already got a certain level of you know, of success or whatever that may look like for you. And then from there, it's seeking out what works for you. And there's so many different modalities, but, you know, therapy, taking on a coach, you know, going to a men's group, like a men's circle, you know, having really vulnerable conversations with your friends, with your partner, and starting to kind of get, like you say, just starting to really, like, get to know yourself and honor yourself and develop, like, a sense of really strong in leadership.
Anything else you want to share?
Yeah, I've got a Instagram page, Coaching with Caspar. So if any guys out there are listening and want to follow some of my work, and I kind of regularly post on kind of insights, it can be a good place to kind of communicate back and forth with me. I'm always happy to have conversations and answer any questions that you may have.
Awesome. Well, thanks. I'll bring you back soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been great.
I hope that you enjoyed this episode. If you have any reflections or insights or questions, all of Caspar's information is available within the show notes. We have lots of conversations to explore in future episodes together. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, there are lots of previous episodes for you to get your teeth into. And if you're enjoying the podcast so far, do take a moment to follow, share, rate and review so that more people can find it. Thank you for listening. Time really is our greatest commodity, so I appreciate you spending it with me. Until next time, big love.